Welcome back, Weather Kingdom. In this update, we are going to be taking a look at this winter pattern, especially for the Northeast here. We have a lot to talk about, so let's just get right into here. So like I did in the last video, we are going to be looking at the satellite imagery once again and look at what's going on. So once again, pretty quiet across the United States, nothing really going on. We do see that there is a pattern jet stream once again still going on here. And when we take a look here, this is where the flow is coming out of, actually all the way up in here, and then it's actually dipping back in here, and then something like this. So once again, what are we looking here is, when we do this, we're looking at warmer and drier air down here, and then up in here, we're looking at colder air up here. So this is colder for the parts of the Rockies and mountains of California here. Once again, an atmosphere river. Bringing some showers, snow and rain across the mountains here of the Sierras, of the Oregon area and everything. And then our jet stream comes back in here. And we've been kind of in this pattern since the beginning of November, where we've been having a troughing type pattern across the Northeast, and more of a ridging out to the west. The questions are, what is it going to look like as we get into the closer to the end of winter? Okay, or I mean the end of November. So there's one thing I kind of want to talk about, and this is this tweet by a very good weather guy of ours, by Tresten WX. Okay, this is a actual guy that knows his climatology and looks at the data. And he says, he said this yesterday, and he talks about yesterday's zero examples suggest a EPO, East Pacific Oscillation, and an Atlantic Oscillation, plus a PNA config for much of November and December. Okay, what that means is we're going to have a favorability of more lockdown colder air in the Northeast. Okay, this is what it's looking like. Colder air down here. Okay, right where I'm drawing right here. Colder air for the Northeast and the Atlantic. But then when we take a look at the oscillation here of the jet stream, look at this. More ridging out in here, getting pumped, right? And then right here, you can tell we're dealing with more troughing. So what does that mean here when we take a look is more of a pattern like this. Boom. This is our pattern that he's talking about. It's kind of easier to see in the maps here right now, all right? And kind of we see this colder air being blocked in here, and then a lot of higher pressures funneling that colder air from Canada and Alaska. So those are the two diagrams. Let's keep reading here. Interesting to see a negative NAO, that's North Atlantic Oscillation, signal developed. This closely matches with a combo of 89, 00, 05, 10, and 22. These are years from the past, and then argues for mid to late December being our coldest period along the eastern U.S. before pack jet extension. Very interesting analog that we have to take a look at. Okay, so this is the National Weather Service, and you can tell these are the watches or warnings, and we actually have a lot of high wind watches and wind advisories across the Northeast for tomorrow. These are high wind watches here, where I'm about to circle right in these darker shadings of tan, is high wind watches. That's our 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Very, very strong, cold northwest wind tomorrow. Okay, as a very powerful cold front that's going to be rolling through and bringing reinsurance of colder air and stronger winds. We usually see these type of wind watches and wind advisories when we do have an Arctic blast. So it is very interesting that we are picking up on that. And you can actually tell these are high wind watches. When we take a look a little bit, once again, let's do this. 25 to 35 with wind gusts up to 60-mile-an-hour winds possible. So okay. So these are the winds that we are going to be forecasting with the NAM model. And this is for tomorrow. So look, throughout today, a little bit windy. And then into tonight, also a little bit windy. And then it cools down as the mid-late. But look at this, you guys. Some very gusty winds coming from the southwest region tomorrow. And then as that cold front comes through, those winds pick up pretty dramatically. At least 50 to potentially 60 miles an hour. Once again, colder air being rushed in. We have seen this in winters in the past when we have Arctic outbreaks. So it is interesting that we are seeing this, especially for the Northeast, and then those winds continue to move on and strengthen some. These also come up a little bit tomorrow, right, into the lower to mid-50s. And then once again, reinsurance of that colder air, especially for the Blue Mountain Ridgetop, the Mount Pocono Mountains, the Appalachian Mountains. You potentially could be seeing some frost by the morning time. And then it warms up again actually a little bit more. And then boom, that shot of really cold air comes in and only keeps us in the low to upper 40s, mostly in the Northeast. And then even some colder air of shots. So it looks like a pretty cold outbreak of wind and cold for the Northeast is going to be happening. Also, potentially our first snow. This is that cold front, and look at that. Potentially back-end snow. Depending on how quickly this transition can happen, we could be seeing our first coating to an inch of snow, especially across the higher elevations in the Northeast here, especially for Maine, potentially some of the mountains here of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, upstate New York, even northern parts of PA. And then we even see a little bit of lake effects now. When we take a look at our total snowfall, it's not a lot, but especially for up here in the mountains, you're potentially talking about 9+ inches of snow. And even when we take a look at the total snow accumulations are there. So these are a little bit less. And maybe a trace to a coating. I don't think too much for the northern Pennsylvania or even upstate New York because of the warmer ground. But especially across the higher elevations like in Maine, Vermont, the mountains, upstate New York, I could see a few inches of snow out of this. Okay? That's just one thing out of many more to come. So now I want to take a look at the GFS model and kind of take a look at this. So this is the GFS model showing that very strong cold front. You're talking about a 989 millibar low. That's a very strong clipper system coming across the Northeast. This is our pattern. Warmer here in the west and that troughing in the east. Okay. And when we take a look at this keeps going, and then we see another cold front potentially brings, once again, colder air. And then we see another low pressure. This one could be a little bit interesting as we have a much larger troughing in the Northeast where we can see a little bit of a low pressure to form along it. And we can actually get some interior, pretty heavy, wet snow, especially across the Great Lakes and the mountain regions with some strong winds. This will be for November 9th. Okay, so quite a couple cold days coming up, according to models. And you actually see some potentially inland snow. You know, this will be very interesting in a very cold outbreak of cold air. Not just for a few days, for quite a bit. And then we see another clipper system, according to the GFS, with some more rain and snow showers. And then more lake effect snow as we get into the mid parts of November. We do it again. We go to November 15th, and we are still running pretty cold. So at least in the next 10 to 15 days, we're looking colder, our first snows, and our bigger frost, potentially, especially across the Northeast, while the rest of the country is looking pretty warm and toasty. some wetter days, some even severe weather potential, and then we do it again. November 16th, another strong cold front with some back end snow and some lake effect snow. And then finally, towards November 20th, depending, maybe we see a Thanksgiving beginning of, I don't know about this. I'm not buying this yet. This is only one wrong, but potentially severe weather, a stronger cold front, warm front up here. This will be some warmer weather across the Northeast finally, and then looks like another surge of colder air. So when we take a look at this department here and just take a look at these temperatures, especially across the days, going into next week is only going to be in the low 40s to upper 30s potentially. And then that little warmer air, maybe in the 50s, depends. But look at this towards the end of November 20th. We still got some pretty darn cold air, only in the low 40s, you guys. So it looks like November's going to be relatively colder, and even with this rain shield and this warmer air, look at this. As we get into 7 a.m., I mean, this is going to warm up, but it's that sign of winter-like weather's really going to be rolling in. When we take a look at the European model, this is very interesting. And look at that. Once again, 50s to low upper 40s, and then as we get into later in November, some even colder days are ahead. Low 40s to upper 30s. Europeans a little bit more warmer, liking some of those 60s making up to southern Pennsylvania. We'll have to wait and see. Euro's a little bit warmer. GFS a little colder. What's going to happen? We don't know fully. Now, when we take a look at the European here, look at the moisture. That cold front rolls through in the Northeast. That second one, a little bit less of that back-end snow. And then we see even another one with some showers and then back-end snow. And look at that, you guys. Both models are showing some big lake effect issues for November 11th, you guys. Very cold Arctic air. This will be the coldest air yet for the season. And then it warms up a little bit, another cold front. And then we do see a little bit of an active pattern ahead. Okay? So, for the most part, when we take a look back in here, this is what we are looking at. Alright? Warmer air up in the central and western, and then that colder air across northeast, and a lot of clipper systems riding along this will bring some lake effect snow, okay? More like a Miller B type nor'easter pattern. Pretty interesting for this time of year. We'll have to wait and see. But for that being said, you guys, I'm going to end it out here tonight. Stay tuned for tonight's live stream on the U.S. weather, and then something for the Philippines in the West Pac hurricane season. As could we be seeing another very catastrophic hurricane for the Philippines? We'll have to just wait and see. Stay tuned for tonight's live stream. See you guys later, and have a good rest of your day.